Good morning. Well, we looked into this and it turns out that this area has a bit of a history. Apparently a few years ago there was a person who complained about some hedges being too high right here in this area. Well, what happened there? Turns out the hedges were cut down, they were removed, but then the resident got upset because the privacy barrier was gone because the hedges were gone. So what about these big trees that you see right here behind me? And this complaint? Take a look.
It's worrisome enough when a hurricane comes along, whether there are any trees or not, but these things they're big. There's certainly reason for concern.
Charles Sass looks up at the 40 to 45 foot high trees towering over his property in the Lake Point part of Wellington. He's lived here 14 years and wants to stay for many more. It looks like Daisy, his dog, does too. The trouble is, Charles believes the trees are a disaster waiting to happen. There's also another issue. The Lake Point community's property line is right here. Now you see these trees over here right beyond the green gate. But the question is, what about these trees right here in the middle? Whose responsibility are these? It turns out management at the Solera apartment complex acknowledges it is their responsibility. But Solera management also feels it's done everything it can to comply with Wellington code.
Wellington has no limitation on the size of a tree. It just needs to be maintained in a neat and healthy condition.
Solera says the company does major trimming every other year and spent $20,000 on that this year alone. So what is Wellington code regarding something like this?
If a tree branch is overhanging a house, that's something the code officer would have to make a determination at that time whether they feel that it poses a risk.
So now, Stephen Koch, Wellington's code compliance manager, is sending a code enforcement officer to the community. The code officer will check out the trees and determine if the trees will stay as is or get a trimming.
This is where we live, and we certainly don't want a tree to fall on it.
Bye. And Steve Koch, Wellington's code compliance manager, was kind enough to join us this morning. So, Steve, what's the verdict on these trees? What's going to happen to them?
Well, the initial inspection found that the trees are healthy. What we did find were there's some dead branches in the lower canopy. We'll go ahead and contact the management company and have that taken care of. But as for anything growing over the property line, Wellington, we did not address tree limbs growing over the property line. That's actually a civil issue between the two property owners.
Interesting. So for folks in Wellington who have a similar complaint, who are wondering what to do or what the most surprising thing would be?
Well, once again, Wellington can get involved in an issue of tree limbs growing over the property line, but property owners are permitted to trim any tree limbs that grow over their property line.
Oh, so they are. And they can also complain online, or tell me about that?
Correct. They can complain online to wellingtonfl.gov. Navigate to the web Q&A, or they can actually call the code compliance hotline, which is 561-753-2560.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you very much. That's the latest from Wellington. Giovanna Dierpick, WPTV News Channel 5.